Welcome to another HRO Today educational podcast. In this series, we aim to provide you the latest workforce management approaches and best practices in HR. I'm Debbie Bolla, Editorial Director of HRO Today magazine. 2020 has been a year of continual market changes, and smart organizations are keeping an eye on their talent pipelines in order to stay ahead of competitors and to be able to quickly respond. HR and TA leaders need to elevate their approach strategies to keep top candidates warm and to continue to attract potential talent for their future hiring needs. Today, I have an expert here with me who will share strategic best practices on how to do just that and more. Cory Kruse is president of Orion Talent. Orion Talent helps people find meaningful careers and businesses grow by finding, delivering, and engaging the best talent from around the world. Its expert team will manage the people, process, technology, and strategy to boost hiring performance. Cory, thanks for joining me today. Why is it important to engage with candidates and build talent pipelines now?
Candidate engagement is collectively all the things that we do to create value through the journey. So, number one, it's creating value, both short and long term. And when you think about it from what do I want to accomplish by investing in candidate engagement, I think simply speed to hire, speed to identify the right candidates, quality, and long-term retention. Three things very much aligned to a robust candidate engagement strategy. Also, candidates have choices, and candidates have choices both in markets that are candidate-driven and even in company-driven. So those companies that have a strategy in place have a competitive advantage. Talent ID and engagement ahead of demand is absolute competitive advantage for those that employ it. Also, the total employment experience starts early and influences the candidate throughout their journey, both positively or negatively. Positive experience invokes positive emotions, and people buy emotionally. So the old adage is people go to work for people, not necessarily companies. That's where the connection, the engagement in a candidate experience that has a positive impact will evoke the positive emotions, and a candidate is more likely to accept your offering.
What are some approaches that are effective?
We've got to start by really mapping the candidate journey and really knowing where you're at now, what's working, what's not, what does great look like in your environment. Got to create value throughout. That value typically comes in positive impressions, both from a branding standpoint. So seeing your brand, does it feel good? Is it relatable? Does it speak to you? And then reinforcing that through the touch points, whether it be digitally, so somebody reaching out via email or chat or text, or personally from a recruiter to a candidate care center to a hiring manager to an HR professional. There's got to be an approach there that is very succinct, and there is consistent message throughout that lends itself to a positive experience. An opportunity for a lot of companies out there, that is visibility. One of the biggest pet peeves of any candidate journey is the old black hole adage, right? And the longer time goes by where a candidate gets engaged with, again, whether digitally or personally, and time goes by and they don't know where they stand, there's a lost opportunity there. So visibility is an opportunity for the companies to get more information in the hands of prospective candidates. Another thing that we see is that the right message should be sent to the right audience. And to give you an example of that, we've run across the same employment message being served up to, let's say, truck drivers and also software developers in the same organization. Again, the right message should be sent to the right audience when it comes to the employment offer when you're engaging with them. There's many others, including looking at what behaviors you're going to employ at different stages in the employment process or the candidate experience. An example of that would be the visibility stage, which is serving up some sort of impression or reaching out, or a first touch, if you will, versus where you're at in the consideration stage. So you've already engaged, you've gone down the line a bit with the candidate's gone down the line, met some folks internally, and there's a consideration stage where company and candidate are both considering some sort of decision, and the messaging or approach should be a bit different or lend itself more to that stage. And then the next stage is the conversion stage. We're going to make an offer. How does that process work? What is the candidate journey through that offer? And how does that acquiesce into a stellar onboarding and 30, 60, 90 experience? The other approaches that we find effective is taking a look at automating what makes sense. And really, when you look at automation, it's those things that are repetitive that could be done with a machine. AI is hot. We leverage AI for the candidate journey. But for candidate engagement, really there's a few benefits of AI. And that is, again, automating repetitive tasks. A lot of them you typically see in high volume recruitment or high volume tasks, enabling better use of the information or the data, and it creates a positive candidate experience. But the recruiting communications piece of it isn't the only area where AI is used. It's used on the back end to measure and things like that. But we leverage AI to do some of those things that can be replicated, pretty much error-proof as long as they're set up right. And it lends itself to a very consistent process. Some of the other approaches that are effective is leverage a candidate referral program and then drive a high adoption rate throughout the organization. Everybody in the company is a recruiter. Candidate referrals are typically the number one source for hiring in many organizations. A healthy candidate referral program will yield in excess of 40% of your hires, and then driving that adoption rate internally will raise that as well. So we think about candidate experience from the standpoint of what it's like in the employment journey and what is the company serving up. But if a candidate is not connecting with a hiring authority or folks that are internal, then it's not going to work most likely. So people typically go to work for other people. The whole message of I value and trust you, connection is the key. And so there's got to be education, development, and work done with those in the hiring population, meaning hiring managers and those making decisions, that is very aligned to your engagement strategies. And then normalize a great experience. It should just be part of the DNA of your company. And that great experience, at least learning about it, what works, is based on what's worked in the past for other folks. Why did folks come to work for you? What were the keys? And, I think a lot of companies fail to go back and really retrace the steps that got them there in the first place. What was the good? What was the bad? What do we need to capitalize on? What do we need to introduce into our candidate engagement strategy? And then collect feedback, do surveys. Net promoter score measurements are good, and then you use that data to continually improve.
Those are some great points. Now, in terms of talent pipelining, should companies approach current candidates and passive candidates differently?
There are things that you just do, whether passive or active. And what I always say is a passive candidate is just an active candidate with a job. So you want to make sure there's an overall message that is very consistent, again, to talent as a whole. How do we message out to that talent population, and is it relevant to somebody, whether they're gainfully employed or whether they're on the market looking, number one. And then the other piece of that is for those passive candidates, and especially when you get into opportunities that are more in high demand or the talent pool is very sparse, engagement is required at a higher level, there's got to be management participation when it comes to engaging maybe a passive candidate. After all, when you look at managing a team internally, typically a manager is responsible for their next hires. I always use the picture of a football team, and they use depth charts. So here's my starting quarterback, here's the second string, here's the third string. And so if we could equip all of our hiring managers with the capability to have a depth chart that would say, here's my next 2 or 3 hires, and we're going to use this to develop or engage these folks that don't work for us now, but we'd like for them to work for us at some point in time. A good way to do that is through sync management participation in a program that engages with those passive candidates. On the active candidate side, while you can still employ that if there are candidates that you absolutely want to go after near term or even longer term, you can employ that. But typically messaging or engagement from the recruiter level will suffice to get them in and get them through the process.
And before I let you go, can you suggest some ways to improve candidate engagement?
Starts with knowing where you are now and what you want your future state to look like. And that can be just a quick look through the process, remapping the process, doing a survey, looking at best-in-class organizations and how they do it. For instance, if your competitor is kicking your butt in hiring the talent that you're trying to get, you need to look at, what part of the candidate engagement can I improve on to help up our percentages of landing the right talent. There should absolutely be a focus on the candidate experience. Again, it's not a necessary evil. It is a strategy, and there should be a focus on that. And then, removing anything that resembles a parent-child experience. And what I mean by that is, many companies out there, and especially ones that are hiring a lot. Let's use manufacturing, for example. Manufacturing grew this year, and with the volume comes a talent pool community that has become sparse and shrunk. Companies we were finding were still running the same candidate experience. What we found in a lot of instances was, we're the company, you want to work for us, you're going to follow our process, and it felt very much like a parent-child experience. Think about anything that resembles that, remove that, make it an engaging experience, make whatever level the candidates are coming in at, make them feel like they are front and center. And more people in the process, more meetings or interviews isn't necessarily better. Better is better. So figure out what you need to do to be more better. Communication, touch points are key. Think about it from the standpoint of a candidate care center to manage the candidate experience. And, we employ recruitment operations administrators that handle the candidate care. They handle the measurement. It's almost like a recruitment concierge. How can we make the experience of anybody coming into our organization the best possible experience? And then let's not forget about management participation. Again, they're responsible. The management cannot take the approach of, just bring me candidates. I don't like this one. I like this one, and I'll hire them. They have to be an active participant, both giving direction and feedback to the recruitment and HR team, as each manager's business or operational reality may be different. And then always ask for feedback, consistent feedback, and don't be afraid to adjust and try new things and get feedback from those new things.
Seeking feedback and making adjustments. That's great advice, Cory. Thanks for joining me today. Until next time, listeners, I'm Debbie Bolla.